Hey guys, now we are going to learn the lesson Soil, chapter number 9 from the Ncert book, grade 7. So let's get started. We'll mark the important points which we are going to learn in the chapter. First, what is soil? Soil is one of the most important natural resources. It supports the growth of plants by holding the roots firmly and supplying water and nutrients. It is the home for many organisms. Soil is essential for agriculture. Agriculture, which is very useful for us. Agriculture provides food, clothing, shelter for all of us. Soil is thus an inseparable part of our life. It is the most important part of our life. The earth fragrance of soil after the first rain is always refreshing, right? Now coming to 9.1, soil teeming and life. One day during the rainy season, Paheli and Bujo observed an earthworm coming out of the soil. Paheli wondered whether there were other organisms also in the soil. Let us find out. Activity 9.1. The solution will be given in this activity of this question. Collect some soil samples and observe them carefully. You can use a hand lens. Examine each sample carefully and fill in table 9.1. Discuss your observations with your friend. Are the soil samples collected by your friends similar to the ones collected by you? Bujo and Paheli have used soil in many ways. They enjoy playing with it. It is a great fun indeed. Make a list of the uses of soil. Now coming to the important point. Polythene bags and plastic pollute the soil. Yes, this we know very well. They also kill the organisms living in the soil, like earthworms, as we read over here. That is why there is a demand to ban the polythene bags. There are many rallies and dharnas, as you have heard about polythene bags and plastics. So please, whoever is seeing this video, please carry with yourselves a jute bag which does not pollute the environment. Other substances which pollute the soil are the number of waste products, chemicals and pesticides. These chemicals may also come from industries. Waste products and chemicals should be treated before they are released into the soil. The use of pesticides should be minimized. And another thing is, when we use most number of pesticides, the fruits and vegetables lose their minerals and vitamins. Soil profile. Soil is composed of distinct layers. Perform the following activity to find out how these layers are arranged. See, whatever activities I'm saying, you can do it in your home to understand more particularly about this lesson and understand the theme of the lesson. So let's start. Take a little soil. Break the clumps with your hand to powder it. Now take a glass tumbler, 3/4 filled with water, and then add a handful of soil to it. Stir it well with a stick to dissolve the soil. Now let it stand undisturbed for some time. Afterwards, observe it and answer the following questions. See, the activity which you do should be like this. The last layer should be with gravel. Above the last layer should be filled with sand. Above that, clay. Above that, water. And above that is some humus. What is humus? So let's understand what is humus. Do you see layers of particles of different sizes in the glass tumbler? As I said over here. Draw a diagram showing these layers. Are there some dead rotting leaves or animals remaining floating on water? Like these. These are called humus. The rotting dead matter is in the soil is called humus. So humus is the rotting dead matter in the soil, like dead plants and or animals. You probably know that the soil is formed by the breaking down of wheat. We forgot to underline. The rotting dead matter in the soil is called humus. You probably know that the soil is formed by the breaking down of rocks by the action of wind, water, and climate. This process is called weathering. So, weathering is the breaking down of rocks by the actions of wind, water, climatic variations, etc. The nature of the soil depends upon the rocks. This is the important. The nature of any soil depends upon the rocks from which it has been formed and the type of vegetation that grow in it. A vertical section through different layers of the soil is called the soil profile. Each layer differs in feel, means texture, color, depth, and chemical composition. These layers are referred to as horizons. This is not so needed. The uppermost horizon is generally dark in color as it is rich in humus and minerals. The humus makes the soil fertile and provides nutrients to growing plants. This layer is generally soft, porous, and can retain more water. It is called the topsoil or the hay horizon. So this is the hay horizon. In this horizon, there is more amount of humus, and of course, in other horizons, there is no humus because humus can be only in topsoil. Indeed, it helps plants to grow. So humus is also important for growing of plants. So generally we need water, sunlight to grow plants. So now we understood even soil. Now we understood why soil is important for plants, because the soil has humus in it, which helps the plants to grow. This provides shelter for many living organisms such as worms, rodents, moles, and beetles. So these are the most common animals seen in the soil. The roots of small plants are embedded entirely in the topsoil. The next layer has a lesser amount of humus, but more of minerals. This layer is generally hardened and more compact and is called the B horizon or the middle layer. The third layer is the C horizon, which is made up of small lumps of rocks with cracks and crevices. Below this layer is a bedrock, which is hard and difficult to dig with a spade. Now let's see an important thing. The finest is the clay, then silt, and the last is sand. Okay. Coming to 9.3, soil types. As you know, weathering of rocks produce small particles of various materials. These include sand and clay. The relative amount of sand and clay depends upon the rock from which the particles were formed. The mixture of rock particles and humus is called the soil. Living organisms such as bacteria, plant roots, and earthworms are also important parts of any soil. The soil is classified on the basis of the proportions of particles of various sizes. If soil contains a greater proportion of big particles, it is called sandy soil. So, we understood over here that if soil contains greater proportion of big particles, it is called the sandy soil. So, we understand that the sandy soil has more amount of big particles. If the proportion of fine particles is relatively higher, then it is called the clay soil. Clay soil is generally used to make pots or mud casts. If the amount of large and fine particles is about the same equal quantity, then the soil is called loamy soil, which is not sandy nor clay, it is in middle. Thus, the soil can be classified as sandy soil, clay soil and loamy soil. So we have learned the three types of soils. The sandy soil, which has a large greater proportion of big particles. Then we learn about clay soil, which has greater amount of fine particles. And then we learn about loamy, which is equal of great fine particles and large particles. The sizes of the particles in a soil have very important influence on its properties. Sand particles are quite large. They cannot fit closely together. So, there are large spaces between them. These spaces are filled with air. We say that the sand is well aerated. Water can drain quickly through the spaces between the sand particles. So sandy soil tend to be light, well eroded and rather dry. Understand this. Clay particles, being much smaller, pack tightly together, leaving little space for air. Unlike sandy soil, water can be held in the tiny gaps between the particles of clay. So clay soils have little air, but they are heavy as they hold more water than the sandy soils. The best topsoil for growing plants is loam. Loamy soil is a mixture of plant clay and another type of soil particles known as silt. Silt, which I have said here. What is silt? Exactly. So let us learn about what is silt. Silt occurs on a deposit in riverbeds. The size of silt particles is between those of sand and clay. So sand and clay. It's neither fine nor very big. It is medium sized. The loamy soil also contains humus in it. It's important. It has the right water holding capacity for the growth of plants. So, it has a maximum capacity to hold the water in it. Okay. Collect samples of clay, loamy, sandy soil. Take 1 minute. Now, I have a challenge for you. Say, which soil is most appropriate to make pots? Yes, of course, it is clay soil. As I said before, clay soil holds a large amount of water and does not break easily. So, we understand by this that the clay soil is used to make pots or mud casts in Hindi. Properties of soil. You have listed some uses of soil. Let us perform some activities to find the characteristics of the soil. Percolation rate of water in soil. So we'll learn what is exactly percolation rate of water. What is the formula for rate of percolation in water per minute? So Bujo and Paheli mark two different squares of 50 centimeters into 50 centimeters each. One on the floor of their house and the other on the kutcha or unpaved road. They filled two bottles of the same size with water. They emptied the water from the bottles, one each. At the same time, in the two squares, they observed that the water on the floor flowed down and was not absorbed. On the Kutcha road, on the other hand, the water was absorbed. So by this we understand that water on the floor does not get absorbed because the soil is covered with the floor. So with this we learn that we should not build many houses because there should be a right amount of water in the soil as ground underwater to help us in summers. So please guys, say to your elders that building houses more than our need is dangerous. Now let us perform an activity to understand this. For this activity, divide yourself. At the place where you collect the soil, place the pipe about 2 centimeters deep in the ground. Pour 200 ml water in the pipe slowly. For measuring 200 ml water, you can use any empty 200 ml bottle. Like this. Measuring rate of percolation is easy by doing this activity. So please guys, do this activity in your home. Note the time when you start pouring water. When all the water has percolated, leaving the pipe empty, note the time again. Be careful not to let the water spill over or run down on the outside of the pipe while pouring. Calculate the rate of percolation by using the following formula. The formula is percolation rate ml per minute is equals to amount of water in ml by percolation time per minute. For example, suppose that for a certain example it took 20 minutes for 200 ml to percolate. So rate of percolation equals to 200 ml by 20 minutes is equals to 0, 0, 2 ones are 2 tens are 10 milliliters per minute. Calculate the rate of percolation in your soil sample. Compare your findings with others and arrange the soil samples in the increasing order to the rate of percolation. To understand this more, I'll say 200 by 20. 0, 0 cancel. 2 ones are 2 tens are. So here was milliliter and here was minute. So we understand by this that 10 milliliters per minute is the rate of percolation for this quantity. Remember that the quantity changes according to what you see. Rate of percolation in your soil sample. Compare your findings with others. On a hot summer day, the vapor coming out of the soil reflects the sunlight and the air above the soil seems to shimmer. After heating the soil, take it out of the tube. Compare it with the soil which has been heated. It's between the two. Okay. Now let's start.